Hi, my name is Roy Damon, and this is another AuthorTrope. We're going to be doing things a little bit different today than normal. What I'm going to be doing is doing a Let's Play with the Castlevania series. And the reason why is because games have a lot of good stories to them too. And it shows how I first started becoming interested in the horror genre. Now, in Castlevania 1, you play as Simon Belmont, and the story is pretty straightforward. You're on the way through Castle Dracula in order to fight every movie monster ever made in order to defeat the King of the Night himself. So, not very much story there. And then you have Castlevania 2, where the story is a lot more developed. What you have is Simon Belmont at the end of the game was injured in his fight with Dracula, and he is now cursed. If he does not resurrect Dracula and then defeat him again, he will inevitably become Dracula himself. So it behooves him to pretty much just resurrect Dracula himself and kill him, and that's the whole premise of the game. But what's very interesting about this story is the presence of Dracula throughout the entire story. It was very creepy to me in my youth. All the colors are drab. It has a very macabre feeling to it. Excuse me, macabre. I can never take that name seriously. But you can see everything is just taken away from color. It's drab. It's almost like sadness himself, and you feel this weight, this presence, this shadow of Dracula that proceeds throughout the entire game. And although it's an 8-bit game and the story is very simple, you see elements of Dracula's malice and torture, and you see him prevail as a hero. This game was a little bit different also because it had a lot of role-playing game elements to it, which weren't popular at the time. But you had experience, you had money, you had upgrades and weapons, you had less difficulty as you went along, depending on what kind of items you got, and you learned from the different villagers, things that you're supposed to do. So it kind of, in a way, was groundbreaking as a role-playing game went. And but these were the kind of games I played. One of the very first games that was horror was Ghostbusters. I played that because, of course, back in the 1980s, I loved the movie, so I wanted to play the game, and it was pretty simple, very difficult. Before I got an NES, I got to play Ghosts and Goblins, which is almost impossible to play. I used to play that at Pizza Hut when we'd go as a family. But this was the first type of game that I played that was horror, and I loved it. I used to go outside and pretend I was Simon Belmont as a child, and I used to go into the woods pretending that I was in these woods here, and that I had like a little, back in the time I had these little neon glow-in-the-dark like ropes that I'd pretend was Simon Belmont's whip, and I would have like adventures like that, and it's all because of the story and the darkness that you felt in this. And it goes to show you don't necessarily have to have a lot of dialogue. If you have presence, if you can make your antagonist just feel like his presence is throughout the entire story, whether he's actually present or not, then I think you have a very good horror story going on. And I think that's an element that is underused, and when it is used in stories these days, it is pulled off very well. You feel that overwhelming sense that you can never get away. And in the same thing, you feel this too. Simon is never safe. There's no point that you are safe. I mean, you have these little respites whenever there's daytime and you happen to be near a village. But other than that, you really have no aid. Even at nighttime, you cannot go into any of these doors. Everybody's stronger at night. It's more difficult, and that goes no matter where you're at. If you're inside one of the mansions, if you're outside in the woods, if you're here in the village, it doesn't matter. The enemies progressively are more difficult, and that's another feeling that you feel, is that there's no escape. No matter where you go, there's no safety. And that, again, is that presence of Dracula. And then you feel, even in your character himself, as you see the difference between him and the last Simon. His hair is raven black, his armor is blood red, all indicating presence of Dracula himself overtaking Simon. So you can see how they pulled this off in a very simplistic way, but still was able to get the character of what really was going on in the story without having a whole ton of dialogue. So that's one of the reasons it was one of my favorite, and still is one of my favorite, Castlevania games. And then you have the prequel, Trevor Bumble. Now this was an epic story in and of itself. This is a story that happened before Simon Belmont. They went back into the past, and I can't remember offhand, probably a couple hundred years. He has kind of the same thing that he's going on with Dracula, except he doesn't just go through a castle. It's through a beginning. Here is the town of Wallachia. I'm not really good with Hungarian, but it's something like that. Wallachia. That probably sounds more close. I'm not sure, but that's where you start off here, and so you're headed towards Dracula's castle. And all these creatures are all about, because Dracula is once again in the land, and he is out to do what Dracula does best, and that's harass and be a tyrant. So, being a Belmont, Trevor sets out to do what his family has always done. And you have a segment at the very beginning of this where it actually starts as a motion reel, like a movie, and I love that. It started off very epic. You had music. The music has always been good in Castlevania, but especially here, starting in Dracula's Curse, the music just went from everything from like a symphony, sometimes to heavy metal backgrounds. It had a plethora, but it pulled off so well. And the story with Trevor is a lot better than the second one. There's more story to it. There's no townspeople. You have more brighter colors here. As you see, things are a little bit lighter. They're not as dark. They're a little bit optimistic if you think about it. And some of the color scheme went back to how it was in the original Castlevania with better graphics. But the mood is not the same. And I think partially the reason for that more colorful palette has to do with the fact is this has a lot to do with friendship. There's 3 people that you can meet in this game, depending on what road you chose, that wind up being your friends. You don't fight Dracula alone in this. Now you can choose to. There are different endings depending on what you do. Just like in the second one, there's, depending on what happens, there are different endings. But in this, you have, and let me see if I can remember, you have Grant. He's a pirate who climbs walls and such. You meet him in the clock tower. Then I think her name, Sypha? Throughout the whole thing, you think is a dude until the end, whenever she takes off her hood, looking a lot like those gray guys that were selling you stuff in the second game. I don't know if they're all women. Makes you wonder now. But once she takes off her hood and flowing blonde hair, you didn't realize that the magician was actually a woman this whole time. Then you have Alucard. His first showing is in this game, and he actually is the protagonist in the later part of Castlevania series called Symphony of the Night. Um, but he's another person that you can wind up. And I think the overall feeling in this game was friendship. You're not doing this alone. You're able to fight Dracula as a group, with companions, and that friendship can overtake the darkness. So it's kind of like the overall theme that you get. But other than that, it's pretty much a standard fare. Kind of like the first game. You go through, kill a lot of monsters. There's no experience points. Not any real way to heal yourself like in the second one, where you can go to a church and I don't know what happens if you take one of those wafers and have absolution or whatever. I don't know, but you get your health regained in Simon's Quest. But in this one, it's not so easy. You have to rely on pork chops. Yeah, I don't understand that one either. But so it was they just improved on it all the way around. You had better villains, you had better fighting, and better story. And that's one of the things that I want to kind of let people know is that games are stories. They have to be written, and I don't think people are appreciative of as much of them as you would for a novel. And I don't think that the media really matters as to what platform that you get your horror from. It can be from a book, a story around a campfire, or it can be from a video game. Either way, the scares can be the same, the horror just as frightening, and your world just as dire and scary. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was something a little bit different I wanted to have a little fun with. And if you liked it too, please leave a message in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And until next time, this is Roy Damon and AuthorTrope. Thanks for reading, watching, and listening. Goodbye.